Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, episode 120. Very fortunate. We're going to talk to Brian Clark, Cincinnati. Grew up as an athlete, played multiple sports, played tennis, played in college. His dad started a tennis club. I've been very fortunate to be there several times. We talk about the different type of camps that we run there. But with Brian, many things to talk about. A club owner, parent of a tennis player, two kids, his daughter plays. But let's get him on the phone. Great guy. We've got to get this thing rolling. And I'm sure there'll be some nuggets that we always talk about. Golden tennis nuggets for people to add to their tennis treasure chest.
Coach Steve.
Brian Clark. Good American name. I've met a lot of Clarks. Not as common as Smith, but Clark's a pretty common name, huh?
You know, it is. It's kind of like Smith.
Have you, you're too young. We're just talking about, before we went on air, we're talking about high school football in Ohio. With
right.
The Dave Clark Five. I think that was the name of a band.
With Dave Clark Five.
You've never heard of it, right?
That might be before my time.
Yeah. We'll have to look that up. I believe they came right after the Beatles. They weren't as big, obviously. Where do we start? Let's start with Cincinnati.
Yes.
That's where
Let's start there.
That's where you're based in your tennis club.
Born and raised. I've
got my notes.
Moved away.
Go ahead.
Moved away for a short period of time, but came back. Couldn't stay away.
And where'd you move to?
Just for about a year out to Colorado, to Summit County.
Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah, out in the mountains.
Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati's like Buffalo. A lot of people move to those two cities and through sports, and they just fall in love with the place.
It's a big small town, and it's a good Midwestern town, and yeah, it's great. Raising a family here, love it.
No, Midwest. There was always a question years ago, why were so many great tennis players from the Midwest? And we talked about the appreciation of indoor court time, family values. Certainly the density of population. It's not like, say, the Intermountain or Texas, where there's miles and miles of nowhere, all the rural space. But all the cities, whether it's Milwaukee or Dayton, Toledo, there's so many small cities as well. I have down here Cincinnati is number 30 on the population list, but also with tennis being successful, good players always coming out of the Midwest. And I think one note is that you were producing better players when people just stayed at home. The advent of the tennis academy and leaving the Midwest, if people do their homework, it's pretty interesting. But I think also that the kids throughout the Midwest really have an understanding of Big Ten sports.
Yeah, Big Ten is big, that's for sure.
I know Jeremy Wertzman mentioned that. He was on one of our podcasts, and we're both from upstate New York, and because of the population in New York, there's no you have Ohio State, the Ohio State. We don't have, that big time football program in New York State.
And it's kind of fun is seeing University of Cincinnati program really develop. If we're talking football, I mean we're knee deep in Big Ten around here for sure. Well, and then you have UK close by, so. Really? Got some really good basketball. I mean, it's a big sports. We're very fortunate being Cincinnati, at least being a small big town. We're a major league town. I mean, gosh, we were the first had the first major league baseball team. I don't know if a lot of your listeners know that, but Cincinnati had the very first professional baseball team, and for years that's why the Reds used to be gifted by Major League Baseball as allowing us to lead off. When I was a kid, we were the first game to play opening day. We got opening day before everyone else because of the history of Cincinnati. So opening day in Cincinnati has been, is like is a festival. I mean, it's fantastic. So, and then the Bengals, of course. But yeah, it's a great town.
And you have hockey, but minor league hockey.
Yeah, minor. That's right.
With
the Cyclones.
Right now, the Bengals are the biggest show in town.
The Bengals are the biggest show in town. They are. I mean, when you go to the Super Bowl, everyone likes a winner. So, and this past season, the Reds tied their work. I believe. Don't quote me on this, but I believe they tied. I thought I heard that they tied their worst record in franchise history, and I think they lost 100 games. So that was not a good year.
With
so yeah, we've turned our attention to the Bengals, and then we've got a new show in town too, which has been kind of fun. Is Football Club Cincinnati, FC Cincinnati, is in MLS, and they built a new stadium. So we have an MLS team, and they got to the playoffs for the very first time. So really neat stadium and great environment, and so that's been a nice thing too.
And with that, talk a little bit about the pro tournament, the pro tennis tournament.
Yeah, well, that's right. The Cincinnati. That's I heard this. I think we are the oldest. We host the oldest pro tournament that's being hosted still in its host city. So yeah, it's been a strong tennis town. It used to be called the Cincinnati Open, and then it changed names to the Tri-State, and then became the Westerns, and then it became the ATP. Thriftway was a big sponsor. ATP, local grocery store. That's when it was just the men, and then they slowly added the ladies. And I think at first it was the men was a pretty high level. But then when they first had the ladies, it was done on 2 separate weeks. So the men would come in and then the ladies would follow. Could have been vice versa, but either way, it was in separate weeks, and it was a lower tier ladies event. And then finally, the ATP and WTA got together and they said, "Hey, let's make this one. Let's bring it together." And it became a tier 1 event for the ladies and a Masters 1000 for the men. And boy, it's been like that for a lot of years now. And but I hear it just got sold. The USTA sold it away.
No way.
To a billionaire from North Carolina, I believe, bought it.
So the tournament's going to move, or
I don't know. That's the big question. Everyone's worried about it because it's been in Cincinnati. This has been it used to be owned by Cincinnati for Charity or was it Cincinnati for Charities or Tennis for Charities? A nonprofit owned it, and then they sold it. I don't know how many years ago to the USTA, bought it, and then they just recently sold it. I mean, they developed it a little bit, but Tennis for Charities owns the property, and then the USTA owned the event, and then the USTA just sold it for I don't even know what the price tag was, but they made a pretty penny on it, unfortunately. And I hope this guy, whoever bought it, decides that, the history of it being in Cincinnati, I really hope that they keep it, because being in the Midwest, I mean, gosh, it's been such a blessing here. I mean, a lot of even Cincinnatians don't realize how, as far as an international event, it is really the top international event that the city holds. And unless you are familiar with tennis, Cincinnatians may not even know that. I mean, they may know it's in town, but to its significance. I mean, when you see Cincinnati and Shanghai and Madrid and all these other cities, and you're like, and then you see Cincinnati on the list of the Masters. You're like, how's Cincinnati there? But yeah, our fingers are crossed that our tournament's not going to go away.
Well, you experienced one year with not being there recently because of the pandemic. It was held in New York, right?
That's right. Yep. it was right before the Open during the pandemic. They did the Cincinnati tournament there off site. So that was, that was a shame. That was just, so yeah, I don't know if that had something that led to this. But boy, we're, all the local tennis folks here are really crossing our fingers that we don't lose it.
I know you and I have been in close communication over the last several years, and therefore that a group of us were in Memphis working with a nonprofit.
Yep.
And when we first arrived, the tournament was being played. And then the following year, it was adios amigos. The tournament moved to Long Island. But I know the people in the area were just crushed that they lost the tournament. I mean, it's such a big deal to
right.
You think of the young kids getting to watch the best men and women play. And what I've always been told, I had been at the Cincinnati tournament with you, but I was always told that your tournament is the best place to go to be a spectator.
It really is. It's intimate. You're right next to the players. Gosh, now you walk around the grounds and you hear so many different languages spoken but yet you can really get close. It's the reason why I've never gone to the Open. I've never gone to New York because we've been so spoiled. I mean, gosh, it's right before New York. I had, 10 days of incredible pro tennis and all the best players are here. And it's like, well, it's in my backyard. And so, but geez, like I said, I hope we don't lose it because I grew up with it.
Well, user friendly, the cost, it's so expensive to go to New York to watch the Open. Not only the tickets, but just staying in the city.
Right. That's what I've heard. So yeah, we're spoiled. And again, it would be a heck of a shame if we lost it.
With all the different athletes, we have to talk about, not right now, I think you could tell us about your father and the tennis club, and then we have to touch upon Pete Rose. And I do think the young listeners who may not have heard of Pete Rose, they need to get on YouTube and watch him slide into home plate.
Oh yeah.
He was known as Charlie Hustle, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Charlie Hustle. But they have a statue out front of the ballpark, Great American Ballpark, with him sliding head first. It's fantastic. I know when you guys were in town for the immersion camp, when you came, we went to a Reds game, and
it was great fun. It was we brought a group of coaches, and they had a contest in who could eat the most hot dogs. But no, I played baseball. I remember asking my mother if I could just play street hockey instead of playing baseball, and she said it was un-American not to play baseball. So I played baseball.
Yeah.
But I never really fell in love with it. But I think it's great to go to a pro baseball game.
It is.
The
it's
atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was a special day to see the Reds. But the other couple times we were there, it worked out. They weren't in town when we were there. But that one year we got to go.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, but tell us, it was. James Van Allen invented the tiebreaker. It was on the scene, I think, 1970, first year. And then your dad and his business partner.
Yeah.
Right after that.
My dad was a heck of an athlete, and so I grew up in an athletic family. At least my dad, and so he was a tennis junkie. He fell in love with tennis, and then in the tennis boom hit, he had a good friend who was a builder, and they decided to build a indoor tennis club, and they were the second local indoor tennis club. I think they opened a week before one of the other clubs. So they were the second built in Cincinnati in 1971, and so I was just a little shaver then, and grew up there, So they started with 4 courts, 2 years, and then everything went really well. And 2 years later, they added 2 more courts, and then 2 years after that, they added 2 more. So we have 8 indoor courts, and we still remain tennis only, family owned and operated. Now, about 24 years ago, my dad's partners wanted to get out, so my dad bought them out, and then at that point, my brother and I were, out of college, and I was teaching tennis already there. And so we took it over and have been running it for, 20 years now. So
and your brother Steve does the books, basically.
Yes. It's a great partnership where he's strong, I'm weak, and where he's weak, I'm strong. So I'm the tennis side, and he's always been the book side and that part. And now his son, his oldest son, Brandon Clark, who graduated from Xavier, walked on at Xavier University. So he played tennis and he graduated with that sports management degree. And so he came, started working at the club, started teaching tennis more full time, and then helping us manage things. And then he's worked his way into he's our general manager now, and really the face of the club, which is fantastic. So he's just done a heck of a job. I mean, gosh.
That's
so
great.
Yeah, it's a real family business.
You guys, the place is immaculate. I mean, you guys do such a great job with maintaining that facility. But Xavier plays their home matches there, correct?
Yes, we are, and they were when I played at Xavier. So we practice there, and we play. They play the men and the women's team practice and play a lot of their matches there because obviously, when they're playing up here, I mean the weather's so iffy. They'll play a few, handful of matches outside they have courts on campus, but nothing indoors. So we're their indoor practice and match facility. Yep.
I think a side note, the times we ran camps at your place, we took the group to walk the Xavier campus. I think that the more campuses young people can see, I think that too many times, and obviously we deal with tennis players, is they're not seeing campuses until their junior year in high school. But I think the sooner they can see college campuses, the better. Yeah,
and we're fortunate because University of Cincinnati is what, like 3.5-4 miles away from Xavier. I mean, so you really have an incredible rivalry when it comes to basketball, but all other sports as well that they compete against. And so we've got two top universities right in town.
Well, with the Reds, it's Three Rivers Stadium, right? There's three rivers in Cincinnati. Is that right? Isn't it Three Rivers Stadium? Or I got that wrong?
No, you're talking about that's Pittsburgh. That's that's further up of the Ohio. We're on the Ohio River, so we have Kentucky right across the border.
Okay,
from us.
I thought there was more than one river through Cincinnati.
Well, we've got a few rivers, but we're not. When you talk about Three Rivers, you're talking about Pittsburgh.
Okay, with right across. How far away is, like, say, Louisville or the University of Kentucky at Lexington? I think it's really close to.
Lexington is about an hour away, depending on traffic, and then Louisville, University of Louisville, is like almost an hour and a half drive. So yeah, that's close too.
With the three big players out of Cincinnati. Tony Trabert played both basketball and he was number one in the world at one time. I've got some things written down about his background. He played basketball at the University of Cincinnati in tennis. I think Marty Reason.
Oh, okay.
Marty Reason was a player who did that as well.
I didn't know he was a basketball player as well. I don't doubt it, though.
Yeah, I mean,
what an athlete.
Yeah, I think basketball, we talk about it quite often in the podcast. I mean, that's a sport. It's not that expensive, and it's still a pickup sport. And I think pickup sports have really gone away. I mean, like soccer in America is not really a pickup sport, but you go to the park and you play basketball. And I do think tennis players should try to master two sports. Well, tell us a little bit about the evolution of the club as far as over the decades.
Well, yeah. I mean, really, what our mainstay is our adult program and our teams. And my dad was instrumental in organizing. This is what really kind of makes Cincinnati unique. And we hear this from sales reps and that go to call on different clubs and different towns and things. But Cincinnati back in the day, as they started building these, indoor clubs during the tennis boom and all of that, the owners were smart enough to get organized and decide, hey, let's partner up and let's develop an adult league, and your team, home and away, and get organized. So they did, and it's the GCITA, Greater Cincinnati Indoor Tennis Association. And so they started that league. It's over 45 years old now. And what's unique about it is that, there's 11 clubs in this league now, and we meet once a month. All the managers, go to a central club. We meet once a month. We work together, even though we're competing. We have great relationships with each other. We do some group buying with Coke products or balls, tennis balls. We do that, and we help each other out. Who's your roofer? Who do you use for your lighting? And we share information, and we on those kind of things, projects and whatnot, and we get along. And you hear a lot of towns, neighboring clubs, they won't even talk to each other. So that I think really developed the strength of local Cincinnati tennis, is that adult league, and it still is the prominent league in Cincinnati. And we do have some USTA play, but it's never really gotten a footing here in Cincinnati because of the strength of this indoor league. So like for our club, I know we've got 44 adult teams.
Wow.
And that's daytime, weekend, men, women, singles, doubles, mixed doubles. And so it's strong. And then after that, I mean, I think the tournament, just having the tournament here, has really been a big part of the strength of local tennis. The history of Cincinnati tennis, like you said, Tony Trabert and Bill Tilden.
Bill Talbert. Bill Talbert, right?
I'm sorry. Bill Talbert. Yeah, Tony Trabert, Bill Talbert. And gosh, we've hosted the Virginia Slims tournaments. We've had in Cincinnati. We've had the 1977 U.S. Davis Cup championship was played here in Cincinnati, and that was a fun story because I was just a young guy, and fall in love with tennis, and here comes the U.S. team with Roscoe Tanner, Peter Fleming, Johnny Mack, and led by Arthur Ashe. They're practicing at my home club, and then right after they get done, then Argentina comes in. They've got Guillermo Vilas,
yeah.
and Jose Luis Clerc. That was basically their whole team, and so they come rolling in and they're practicing. So I'm, as a young kid who's starting to play some tennis, and it was just it was magical. So it's just that kind of thing. I mean, it's has led to, I think, the strength of local tennis and the community here.
Let me back up and ask about leagues. NTRP, have they always been NTRP? Or are they not in NTRP as far as the
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we use the NTRP. But it is a little, because of the history, because I do all the ratings at the club. So anyone new who wants to join in a league or something, or, I get with them for half an hour and all that. So I've been doing that for 15 years or whatever it's been. And so I always tell folks, hey, now I'm going to give you a local rating. It is NTRP, but if you go to Florida, if you go somewhere else, you're probably not going to be that number, So Cincinnati, it's funny, the GCITA folks want to play up, but then they get into USTA, and of course they want to sandbag and play as low as they can so they can move on and try to play for a national and all that stuff. So it's interesting how people, and I'm the interclub. One of my jobs at the club is I help manage the 44 teams. So I work with the captains. I help put the rosters together every year and work through that process. And so it's those ratings.
With the ratings for our listeners, it's 1 through 7. 7
Mm-hmm.
working backwards. You have to be able to, pay all your bills. You got to be a full-time professional player. Then you go to 6.5. You're making some money playing pro tennis. But anyway, here's a story for you. I was working in Stowe, Vermont for All American Sports, and I was asked to cover for one of the pro shop attendants. So I'm behind the desk, and under the desk there's a glass casing, and you can see the ratings, and each level had a little paragraph. And so Jimmy Connors comes in, and I just pretended I didn't know who he was. At the time, he's number 1 player in the world. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, if you just read that sheet and tell me what your level is, I could try to find a game for you." But the NTR,
I've never heard that story, and I've heard a lot of your stories. I've never heard that one. That is great.
Yeah, someone said the other day, because we got to start redoing them. And said we made like 27. Use my name in third person, Steve stories. Someone said, "Did you run out of stories?" I said, "No, I got."
I know. I miss those Steve stories.
I got a few more. We're as you know, we're gonna, like everybody else, keep trying to improve. So we have to circle back and do that. But
yeah.
Why do you think the NTRP never worked for juniors?
Gosh, that's a great question. I don't know if I have the answer on that one. I mean, just locally seeing, I mean, the evolution of, gosh, we used to hold these local tournaments, and I used to run them. It was through our league, and they were called Grand Prix. And you would have a ton of kids playing, and there were some good players playing in these Grand Prix. Sorry if that's my son. And so, but gosh, over time with USTA and kids chasing points, I mean, eventually those Grand Prix went, we lost them. So, and it's kind of a shame, but yeah, I don't know if I have the answer to that one.
For the longest time, I was not around indoor tennis, and then if I was around indoor tennis, it was just where I was traveling and doing, camps and clinics, workshop for coaches. But then to finally, work for a company, okay, indoor courts, you start to realize 7,200 square feet of heated and lighted space. I think the NTRP it's turned into a great business model for league tennis. But I do think that, with everything, there's a positive and negative. That the age group tournaments lost their popularity, in my opinion, as the NTRP. I mean, it's been so successful. I mean, just the social component, social side of it. But I do think that many tennis teaching pros, years ago, it's interesting that you get on the court and hit with people when they're new to your club and you rate them. It used to be you had to be verified. And when I was training tennis teachers in an academic setting, we had 9 certifications. And,
right.
Just feathers in your cap to help people get jobs. And one of them was become an NTRP verifier. But for the longest time, you just really self-rate. But when the pros were doing it, I think what happened was that many of the pros, they just couldn't tell someone that they were a 3.0. They would tell them they were a 3.5.
Right.
And is that
massage their ego a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
George Bush #2 actually was booted out of a league for sandbagging, where he wanted to win. Politicians want to win. He wanted to win, so instead of most people, their ego, they would want to say that they were, say, a 4. Everyone's saying, "Okay, I'm a 4.5," when they're really a 4.0. But I understand that. I think that the rating that he was a 4.0 and he told people it was a 3.5, and he got booted.
We start our adult leagues. We use tennis scores, and they're out of the Carolinas, and to manage our leagues. And so they do our schedules, and they do our website, and so they host all that stuff. And so they have a algorithm built into their league management website, and a number of years ago, we started leaning towards using that more as a guide for the clubs and things like that. And we wouldn't show it to the players. Well, it evolved where we started, people knew that we were talking, when you're placing players on teams and you talk about ratings. And so then we would we kind of let the cat out of the bag that we were starting to use these rating numbers, this algorithm to place players on teams. Now we've come full circle where we're using them exclusively, and each level has a range, a numeric baseline or benchmark for that level, and there's some cushion in there. We leave a whole point. So there's a spread, and there's plenty of room to negotiate to let clubs still be able to field teams. I mean, that's part of it. You have to have a little bit of cushion so you can have enough people to have a team. But we've really come and used those ratings as far as moving, having people play too low. So we haven't gotten strict to the point where you can't play up, or you can sub up, or you can't, players that want to keep trying to play up. So, but we're really using them, and I think it's not a perfect system, but I think it's really helped bring some parity to the league and really better matches. That's why we're using it. So it's interesting how we're using this algorithm stuff now. Used to do it mom and pop, where we would go and have the schedules done by a local gal who would just do it in her basement, and we'd go over to her house and home and away matches, and then we'd leave it up to each club, to kind of place players where they think they should, but now we're really using this algorithm. So
I remember my travel. I think the gentleman's last name was Jones. It was so many years ago. It was in the 80s. But he was trying to have it be nationwide, where you would enter your scores, and like you're talking about, and then it would be, 3.52 or 3.55. I just remember that. Here's something for our listeners. We've had some adults where they stopped taking lessons from us and told us that they were improving too much, they were improving too fast. It's pretty interesting scenario.
I've never heard of that.
Well, some people have the wherewithal where they can come and train like a junior, and they'll say, okay, we'll see you after school every day for 2.5 hours. And,
right.
Actually, this is way back. Craig Tiley's name comes up quite often. He was working on his master's at the nearby university. There was Tyler Junior College, and there was the University of Texas at Tyler. And with this group of men, we were doing body fat. That's another story. But let me come back to the men who were going to nationals and some of them getting booted, but because they were told that they weren't a 4.5. But because we really got into fitness with these guys.
That smells like USTA all the way.
So anyway,
that's what they do. They want to sandbag, right? The USTA, they try to play as low as they can and get away with it, and sandbag matches or whatever. That's what you hear. Those horror stories of players.
But if you can get some adults to, they can, they're going to really work on their game and be filmed, and to do static balance and just go out and do the reps and do the same thing that we recommend for many juniors. Is you take a couple steps back from competition, you just regroup, rewire. But we've had, I'm just talking about, half dozen people over decades where, they found out that, well, if I'm not in the 3.5-4.0 range, because when you go up to a 4.5, there's not that many people to play with, correct?
Yeah, it really starts to get limited. Now we've got, again, it goes back to our, inflated. We've got several 5.0, ladies teams. I hope I don't want to offend any of them who might be listening to this, but we've got a lot of five, and they would probably admit it too. But you talk about a 5.0 player around the country, and you say 5.0. Well, typically a 5.0 player has played some college tennis. That's a high level. Well, even though we have several 5-0 ladies teams, and we really don't have any 5-0 players. I mean, true, who played high level college tennis, or because if you look at 5-0 players that play, if there's for USTA, I mean, they've all played college tennis at a high level, probably.
Well,
and can still run and can still move.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The movement, the mobility.
Right.
With the group I was referring to, that we started doing body fat and just train like a junior. Bring your running shoes, bring your skip rope. That in senior tennis, some people certainly age at a slower rate, and when you go to say watch the 70s, any age group, 60s, 70s, the people that are really moving well have a leg up.
Yeah, there's no question. I know that. I just got. I know I told you. I just had my left knee total knee replacement, and I'm just getting back where I'm hitting a few balls. And I was playing last night, playing in with a couple buddies of mine, and who we have kind of a regular game. And boy, I just am. I'm not moving well.
So artificial knee, right?
What's that? Artificial. Yeah, total knee replacement. Yeah. So, which is fine. I mean, heck, that's the nature of it, and I just have to take my time. But so it's humbling to be able to, I before surgery, I was playing at a much better level than I am now. So, I guess that's part of that.
Just have to yell yours more. You're playing doubles only, right?
Doubles only, yeah. Right now, yeah.
What do you think with the NTRP crossing over to the UTR? So obviously a city like Cincinnati, there's not that many 5-0s, but say the person who's going to work every day and they played college tennis, and they are legitimately a solid 5-0. It'd be interesting what level UTR, because I don't think that you could tell us about your club. At most places, I mean, I always saying that the youth versus veteran match, the junior and the senior, those matches.
I love that idea. Yeah,
they don't take place like they used to. So, what do you think a 5-0, solid 5-0 would be? Would that be someone who's say a 10-5 on the UTR?
I would. That's when you had said that, I was thinking at least in the 10s. Yeah, the 10. I would be. That would kind of where I would guess. If they still move well, they're young college player. I would, maybe on the female side, maybe you're looking at 9s, or even 8s, 9s.
So you have your citywide league. Do you have a flex league? I mean, in other words, where it's like having a club ladder and we've tried all different products, all different leagues, ideas and stuff, and we tried to do a flex league, and that was one of the through Tennis Scores that they could offer with their website, and we tried it, and it just didn't it didn't really take. People want organization. They want captains to put matches together and practices, and for people to really call, because they had to set up their own matches. It's not, none of it was scheduled. That's the flex part, right? So and it just found that people, you'd have a handful of folks who are really gung ho, and they'd make the calls and they'd set up the matches, but overall it just died really, so we don't offer it anymore. That it didn't take. Yeah. For our listeners,
at least in Cincinnati.
Flex league is flexible where, many times the person behind the front desk has the, I would say, burden of trying to make that happen. Where calling people up, can you play? But I think that the occupancy rate of indoor courts is so high, it's probably not as much in demand as it was.
Well,
at one point.
we offer services for our members where we do in-house leagues, and we do an in-house both men's and women's during the weekday. Evenings, we have a game arranging service. So at a certain time and in a certain day in the evening, we will put members on this. We use Constant Contact, and we'll put them on this email distribution list and shoot them out weekly emails, invites, and whoever wants a match that day, for the upcoming evening, whatever it is, Wednesday night for the men, if they want to play that Wednesday, they simply respond to our invite, and then we go to work and we find them the match. So we do weekly game arranging. That's been a real hit. So we offer that. That's just for members. And then we'll do we just started doing a ladies one. The men has been a real hit. And what's nice is that they're playing later at night. So they're using later court time than if we didn't arrange something. We may not have sold that as well. But, so that's something that we do. And then we have in-house doubles leagues that we kind of do that with, doing the same kind of email invite thing. But that we actually, I run like a 3-5 men's doubles on a certain night, and I have with some help of some brighter minds than me with technology, they built this algorithm for me in my spreadsheet. So it took me out of the lineup business, and I created this league where guys, their results, we track their results each week. They play a number of games, and I log the games in, and it updates their player rating, and then they play an order of strength based on that rating. So that's just all in house. And then of course we have the weekend for adults. For working adults, we have the weekend traveling teams with home and away with that league. So we do a combination of in-house stuff that's arranged for folks, and then the traveling league. And I think most people really, they want the organization. They want someone else to find them the matches. You just don't. You still see some people, finding their own groups and finding some matches on their own. But those products, or those services that we provide, have been real strong, for us. So
I've always said that the person who has to arrange matches, that may be the toughest job in tennis, where because everybody wants to play a better player and win. Today,
I used to do it before I got smart and had someone build this algorithm for me and put it in a spreadsheet. I organized this upper level 4-0 and up, and upper level men's doubles group on a Thursday night. And and it was all in order of strength. And I would track just by hand, the results and move guys up and down. The problem was it was completely flawed and I had over 70 some guys in this league. And of course, you don't have that many playing each week. So every week you got a different group of guys playing, and you just, sometimes you'd have 5 or 6 guys who deserve to be on a certain court, and you had to tell 2 of them, you're playing down. And then you get the complaints of I won last week. I deserve to go up, and so when I got this algorithm built into this thing, that saved me. That saved me, because now I let the math do it.
In the citywide league, most of the leagues, it's all doubles?
No, it's doubles. It's men's and women's doubles. On the weekends, they play 3 courts. Women's doubles during the week for daytime women, and then on the weekends we have women's singles and men's singles.
Okay.
So they play on opposite. You could be on a doubles, like for the men, it's on Saturday they play doubles, and the doubles leagues go on Saturday, and Sunday are the singles leagues. So, and then we have Friday night mixed doubles league, and we have a weekday women's singles league on Friday during the day. So it's really comprehensive. It's
Eastern Hills, correct? Name of the club. So when do the doors open? When do the doors shut?
Well, it depends. We have some early drill groups, but typically 7 a.m. We don't have fitness or a pool or a track or anything like that. So it's just tennis. So typically we open between 7 or 8 a.m., depending if we have some drill groups. We have some cardio classes in the morning on certain days. And then depending on what we have cooking at night, we have, like on Thursday night, we'll have play finish at 11 p.m. So So it's an all-day deal. Weekends are shorter hours. We don't go as long, although, we do host, some Xavier matches that make us go longer. We'll have events in the evenings, some weekends and things like that. So, we do pickleball, on like a Sunday night pickleball open club pickleball. So we've dabbled in it, but we haven't gone full on, it really, we use it during odd hours, but yeah, it's definitely something we've used to fill some court time at odd times.
I spoke to Mark Hamlin today. Mark Hamlin, lifelong friend. We grew up together, and I convinced him to get into tennis teaching. So he's my first student tennis. First person I taught to teach tennis. But
I remember Mark.
He's been in Germany a long, long time, and he
right,
40 years, I think. 1981. So 41 years ago. But he used to run a moonlight league. I mean, so he had people playing at midnight.
Wow.
But no, it's great to hear that the club is so active. Go ahead.
Our location is great. I mean, that's one of the things that's nice. We're the only club in Cincinnati that sits within the city limits, and all the other clubs are outside the city limits. So we're very centrally located. We're located near some fantastic neighborhoods with people that have some affluence and whatnot, and just our tennis folks, and so we're just it's been great. I mean, where we are.
I ask young people if they've heard of Howard Johnson's. Used to be you'd go there for an ice cream, but every town seemed to have a Howard Johnson's, kind of like a Holiday Inn today. But the Howard Johnson's, the first rule of business, number one, is location.
Yeah.
We have housing for a limited number of players, and what's ideal about it is you can just walk a mile, half mile perhaps. It's right around the corner where there's 16 3-wall racquetball, and they're always open.
Oh, wow.
And the lights are on till 9, and what a better way to say, okay, I'm going to go, hit an extra 30 minutes of tennis balls. I have to say and I hope my nephew and my brother are listening to this. My dream is to build an incredible wall outside at the club and have it lit. I know it's one of those things is you think the business, the business side and the tennis side, and I'm more on the tennis side, and I understand the business side. Of course, you got to keep the lights on, all that stuff, but developing tennis players, gosh, the wall is fantastic. Well, you do have some land behind the building, correct?
Yeah, next to us. Yeah, we have a lot next to us, so there is that. But
yeah,
so I keep crossing my fingers. We'll see. Hopefully down the road, before it's all said and done, I'll have a wall at some point.
Backwards, yeah, they need to be built. Years ago, late 70s, John Wayne Tennis Club, Newport Beach, California, 16 courts, I believe it was. In the front desk, you could actually see every court. They had 16 televisions. They didn't use, the term monitor was not used at that time. And they had a rating system 1 through 10. And it was really amazing. The players that were 10 were all basically legends of the game because so many people, Roy Emerson was coaching there at that time. What are your thoughts with the UTR? We talked about the NTRP. As a club owner, I know your daughter, Sarah, plays well, so you know it from that side. But what about being a club owner with the UTR? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. They've called on us periodically every year, and I know Brandon's looked at the costs and some of that stuff, and it just, with everything that we've got going with our leagues and our drill groups and our in-house groups and how we built our own algorithm and some of that, we just haven't embraced it because I think we're a little spoiled because we fill our courts, and so it limits how creative you can get. And I think when you start looking at UTR events and how can you integrate UTR with the current players, I think you're probably looking at, well, I want to build something. I need to fill court time and I need to, generate things. And with us, it's just what we have going does the trick. So, and like I said, we with certain groups, we've already kind of done our own we have our own algorithm kind of built in. I haven't had a lot of really any members who've approached me and said, hey, we'd like to do some sort of UTR event. We'd like to play some UTR, sanctioned matches and that kind of thing. With all the adult teams we have, like I said, we had 44 adult teams. I think out of the 11 clubs, we're barely third with the most adult teams in this entire league out of those 11 clubs. So we've got a lot, and with only 8 courts. So, which, as I travel with Sarah to do some of these tournaments, I have get to know the parents. They often ask me, so they find out I manage a club or whatever, or I work at a club, and they say, we're not familiar with that club. It's because we don't host the junior tournaments, and they tend to know the clubs that do, and it just goes back to the health of our adult leagues, and our weekend play is so strong that it's like, well, we're and with Xavier matches and things like that, we've got commitments and socials and whatnot. We don't have the need or to do the junior tournaments. We have some junior match play and some things that we offer members and non-members, but as far as hosting, usually you find that the clubs, and I could be wrong, but that host a lot of the junior tournaments are really looking to fill that court time. They have court time to fill, and they want to put people on court. So a little bit spoiled that way.
Well, let me ask, or first I should state, what's a mushroom? The mushroom is someone my age, and they wear the big floppy hat. That's the mushroom hat. And typically they have a band around their elbow and they can't move. And those matches used to be so critical where the mushroom, the guy in the 60s, in his 60s is playing the Hot Shot Junior, where I know at one point with Nadal coming on the scene, the kids would have a pair of shoes and wristbands and headbands and a
big bag
and a racket. It was all the black and yellow, and it was a pretty safe bet that the mushroom would win.
Right.
Who
brings his own chair to the court?
Yeah. If it's outdoors, they're going to take that chair and put it under the tree, and
right.
But the junior won't take the ball out of the air, and the hacker is hacking away on the backhand side, floating the ball up, and they really don't have anything except for the mentality. They keep the ball in play and they can lob, and they take the role of the spoiler. I do think that the mushrooms now are playing pickleball. When you say that, or you still have a lot of old people playing? What are the demographics?
Yeah, you do find, you hear how people are, tennis is hard on their body and or has been, and you've seen that they've transitioned to pickleball, and I understand it. Gosh, the first thing I did after this surgery, I was visiting some family up in Michigan, and I've got a sister and a brother-in-law who love pickleball. They're not tennis players, but they love pickleball, and I was 2.5, almost 3 months out after having this knee done, and they said, well, you want to come play? And I said, well, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to sit around the house, and I know I can at least walk to a ball, so that's what I did. And I was able to play, and I didn't run a stitch, but I was competitive because I could walk, and I could bend down and at least pick up some low balls, and with my tennis skills, I was right there. And, so yeah, you kind of see that definitely pickleball's got that group. But
well, I do think
we'll see where it goes. I mean, will there be adult leagues? So, how or is pickleball just going to stay as you see the competition more being with organized tournaments. At least here in Cincinnati, I haven't seen a real organized league per se. You have clubs. You have, like in Cincinnati, they have a Cincinnati Pickleball Club, and they're organized as a group where they say, hey, we're going to go here, we're going to play there, hey, there's courts, and they kind of organize group. And then, but I haven't heard of a real pickleball league. I'm sure that's coming at some point, but we'll just kind of see how that goes, I guess.
The people that were in tennis in the 70s can see it as clear as day that what's happening with pickleball now, it's like the tennis boom of the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just growing in leaps and bounds. And
it is.
But, I think also the steal lines from everybody, Chris Clore, a lot of junior players are just trying to launch missiles. They have the sophisticated modern rackets, and they're just teeing off on the shot times. They can't work the rally. And back when everybody was playing with a wooden racket, the speed of the game definitely was different. I think a lot of juniors will look at YouTube clips and just write off the players from years ago because the speed of the game was much slower. But the quality, the skill level. Roger Federer is the one who says, well, one of the reasons people don't come to the net is they fear the low volley. But you can play a point where you come in and most of the time you don't have a low volley. You get the ball above the level of the net.
Right.
Let's circle back to your background, and that ties in obviously with tennis instruction. But you played, all the American sports. What I'm sure baseball, basketball, definitely football.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing all the sports, basketball, baseball, swimming, soccer. And then, but my first love was football, and my parents didn't let me play until I was in the 6th grade. So, but I was one of those kids that I just loved it, and I would, dress up as a little kid. I'd have the football outfit, run around the house, run into stuff, and once I got to play, that was really I played tennis. I mean, I because I grew up with it, and we grew up taking the classes, and I enjoyed it, and I loved going. My dad was a tournament player, amateur, local, big tournament player here, and so I would go and watch him play tournaments, and he and I would hit, and I really enjoyed it. And but it was a seasonal sport for me. It was back when you change sports with the seasons, and so.
So you played high school tennis then?
I did. I played high school tennis and high school football, and I went to a football powerhouse, Moeller High School in Cincinnati, which was built by Jerry Faust. I know you know that name, who went on to coach at Notre Dame from Moeller. He went from high school to the head coach of Notre Dame. So he built the program, story. And it is. I mean, if you look, you just Google Moeller, Cincinnati Moeller. People who know high school football around the country know that name. And so I went because I loved football. I wanted to play there, and I did. And what was really great is just the culture. It was my first introduction to a championship culture, and you got to be around because it attracted the best athletes from the area. So I was around world class athletes. I mean, I had Ken Griffey Jr. in my class. I mean, he was on my football team, and I mean the Larkins, Bob Crable, Tom Waddle. I mean, there's this name after name of players that I got to either practice against or watch play or play with, and it was a heck of a culture. So. That was really my first introduction to technicians. I mean, it's kind of led me to where I am now and how I gravitated towards the GreatBase. I mean, that's kind of where we're going with this thing. And that is, that program was that football program at Moeller was just, everything was technique. And when you came in, your freshman year, they ask you, what position do you want to play? And 9 times out of 10, whatever position you told them you wanted to play, now they'd move some players around, but usually you're playing that one position for 4 years. And by the time you're a senior, you've got that position down. You know your reads, you know the plays, you know technique. I mean, everything was about technique.
And you played on 3 teams,
and the amount of film work. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you played freshman, then JV, and then varsity.
Yeah, I played all 4 years. I mean, that was my thing, and then I played tennis. Played tennis just for fun. I mean, and I enjoyed it, and I did fairly well in tennis, mainly because I love doubles, and I played doubles well. That's how I ended up making Xavier University's team. Is I did well in doubles, and was kind of Xavier's double specialist. But
well, being at the club, I mean, obviously you grew up with doubles, right?
Yeah. I grew up playing tennis, and so I had it my whole life. So that was.
I interrupted when you said film work, but before we get on to film work and your high school days, I remember Jerry Faust, and everybody in America was pulling for him. He was so successful in high school, and to make that jump to Notre Dame. Just touch upon Jerry Faust. How did that work out for him at Notre Dame?
It's a shame it didn't work out, because I think he embodied everything Notre Dame stood for. It seems like, I mean, just in not only culture, faith, just everything, just raising outstanding young men. I mean, turning boys into men. I mean, and he comes back and he still volunteers. He still does stuff at Moeller, and he's an icon, and he did it right, but he just didn't have. And I don't know if it was the X's and O's. I was not coached by him. My head coach was Steve Kalani, and I played linebacker, and my linebacker coach Jim Lippincott, who ended up going from high school to the Bengals, and so. But you just heard, and you can kind of see what he was about. And the guys that coached me worked as Jerry's assistants. So it just there's a lot of tradition. I mean, it's just like Notre Dame. It's tradition, right? I mean, gosh. And so he embodied everything that Notre Dame stood for. He just didn't get the wins, unfortunately.
I like the quote you shared with me the other day. I never heard that. Tradition is always under construction. Is that how it goes? Yeah.
I love that one. Yes. Yeah. That's a Lou Holtz quote.
Lou Holtz.
I love Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz is like one of my favorite coaches of all time.
Here's a story for you. So I was in a restaurant. Fun guy, Luke Wickham. He's been my real estate coach, and he was helping out with a project that we had in Orlando. Built a small tennis facility. So Wickham goes to the men's room. He comes back and goes, "Smith, Lou Holtz is here." And I said, "Is he with a group of people?" He said, "No, he's eating by himself." I said, "Is he done?" He said, "Almost." I said, "All right. Well, wait till he's done. You don't want to interrupt someone when they're eating." And so I went right up and I said, "Lou Holtz, I know more about Lou Holtz than Lou Holtz." And it was so much fun. I said, "You remember the time when you were in Minnesota?" And he was talking to the people of Minnesota, and crazy days today, and people might take this as a racial comment, but he got in front of the people of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and he said, "The heart and soul of this team is going to come from Minnesota," and everybody applauds and they're cheering. And then he, like a true comedian is, he pauses and he goes, "But we're going out of state for legs and for legs because there's no speed in this entire state." And but no, Lou Holtz. The acronyms win. What's important now? But there's a great story about Lou Holtz. Back in the day, coaches didn't make very much money, and he was an assistant for Woody Hayes. My father was a huge Woody Hayes fan. He used to help Nixon write speeches. So, and he's way overweight. But Purdue had a guy named Leroy Keys, who was a great defensive back, like the best in the country, and up for the Heisman. Maybe he went both ways, but anyway. So, meaning that he have to go both ways. He played offense and defense. Anyway, they were like third and long, or there was a certain situation where Lou Holtz told the defensive backs to move back in the field, and Woody Hayes yelled and said, "No, move up." And Lou Holtz said, "No, they got to move back." So Woody Hayes right there, said that, "Hey, you're going to get fired. They don't move back now. You're out of here." You're right on the sidelines. But he used to say that, Woody was with his stomach, I was on the 35 and Woody was on the 40, and his belly was bouncing against me. But no, I love Lou Holtz as well. But tradition is always under construction. He's somebody, our listeners, he made it happen when he had his turn at Notre Dame. He was very successful.
Well, that's how I feel about our GreatBase program. I think we're in our infancy still, our stage still. And Coach Gary Alpert, who's been instrumental in showing me the way, leading me to you, leading me to Vic. So, and that's how I feel about our program, and we're, I guess we're seven years in now. And I still think it's under construction, so,
I'll read this to the listeners. I see in your notes. I really appreciate how you put this into words. The GreatBase to me is an incredibly detailed roadmap built on truth.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Gary.
And I tell you, as a student, as you start digging into it, it's like an onion. I mean, you peel back something, you're like, what? And you just make more discoveries, and the depth of it, I mean, it's just humbling. And, I mean, for me, I felt like I grew up with we had some great pros at Eastern and growing up, and they did great with, it's kind of how I look at my teaching career. It's the 3 E's of a lesson. And our pros were so great at, they knew that they would give folks exercise. They were creative. They managed people. They were really well organized and all of that thing, and lesson planning and things like that. And they were great with, as far as enjoyment. I felt like I could chat people up. I worked, Jim Brockoff, who was my college coach. I also worked with him and for him, teaching tennis, and he was a Pied Piper and just was such a great people person and a wonderful, wonderful man. He's like a second father to me. And he just taught me the art of being able to chat people up. He would have made an incredible first baseman. He could chat people. He could chat with anyone. And so you learn how to do that with teaching. And I felt like, but I realized when Gary, introduced me, and it was when he first joined our staff in 1999, he when I interviewed him, it was almost like he was interviewing me. It was really odd because he came at me with stuff I'd never heard before, and I'd been around a lot of pros, and at that point I'd hired a few myself, and but he came in and I think he was feeling out the situation, see if I was even game on, am I open to information, and I was, and I realized, I think I kind of go back to my football days. And then, and also, I taught, when I moved out to Colorado, I taught snowboarding, and I worked underneath a brilliant coach. His name is Lowell Hart. And, they brought him from Stowe, Vermont to Keystone. I worked at Keystone on their first snowboard coaching team. When Keystone, the resort, allowed snowboarding for the very first time, they brought in Lowell Hart, and I was on that staff. So he had to come in and he had to train everyone, but he was a technician. And the same thing with my football career at Moeller. It was all technique, and it was technique. So I grew up in these different sports and around people who were technically sound, and they coached through technique, and and that was a real value. And I never really had that in tennis. And so my missing link as a coach, I think, was the education part, that last E, where, learning the biomechanics, the physics, the dimensions of the court, things like that. Diagnosing a primary flaw. I mean, that right there, I had when I was teaching, I taught like most people. I taught what I was taught, and I just took it for granted that, it must be how it should be. And things like that. But I had no idea. I was lacking that education. And I thank Gary for that, because he's really the one who led me to Vic. And once I got to that, it really all just started making sense. And then, so Gary was with us for a couple years, and he moved out to Colorado for like 15 years. Gary Alpert, who was a tennis techer for the listeners, studying underneath you. And so then he came back to us, and that's when I came down to, when he decided to come back to work at Eastern. And at that point he had introduced me to your information online. And that's when we came down and that's when you were working at NC State, and we came down to check out your program and meet you in person and hear more about it. But yeah, that was, for me as a coach, it was that education part that I was lacking. And now that I have it, I mean, now that I it's like that onion, you peel back these layers of all of this fact-based information. It's just, first off, it was humbling. And then it got me energized back into teaching again. And it's, to me, it's like fertilizer.
Well, one thing, the layers of onion, I like how you put that, where I can remember, just like everyone back, in our beginning podcast, I think we have 3 episodes just dedicated to Vic Braden. Well, Vic, initially everybody met him because PBS started filming matches. Vic was doing PBS commercials. I mean, it was a non-commercial network, so it was, the 1 minute, the 90 seconds in between when they changed from one end to the next. Then there was Tennis Magazines. His book came out in '77. But if people, in the GreatBase is, it's a body of work that certainly there's many other tennis coaches, but Braden is, as you know, the cornerstone. Mm-hmm. With that, if someone studies what we've assembled, if they study Braden information and some of the add-ons, very impressive add-ons, and you think about, a Jim Lair or a Dennis Vandermeer and Welby Van Horn, on and on and on. But the more you work the information, that's where the layers of an onion, that's where the depth comes in. If someone teaches, if they study Braden, and 10 years later they've been working it, it's like it just makes more and more sense as they go. Yeah. You see it start to really work. And in our past programs, I mean, we did it. We did the best we could as a staff, and I worked under some great guys who really cared. But strokes and grips and some of that, they didn't really stand for anything when it came to technique, and so they'd allow players to kind of gravitate to whatever they were doing, and so to me, that's why it just never. Again, my background in football and how everything is technique. They used to, when we would go to the film room, they would count how many false steps we would take. What our reads were like. What our, tackling technique. Everything was technique. And then the other sport of tennis is like there was very little taught. So that's why I found myself gravitating towards it, because I thought it was missing. I knew it was missing. And I knew that our past program didn't really stand for anything as far as stroke production. And I mean, you just kind of let kids do what they want. And if you see a decent stroke, yeah, you compliment that. But there was the corrective measures for kids who weren't doing it. There was no real progression or corrective measures that were being utilized to try to get a certain technique. And
that's what really kind of sold me on that. Plus the science part of it. And that's, you start investigating it and listening to Vic information and getting an aerial, and gosh, that'll blow your mind. I mean, you start going down that road. It's like, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, so it's really been an interesting journey. To that coaching side.
Oh, that's great input for our listeners. With Gary Alpert, I really respect this about Gary. So many of the people that I trained, they went through this 2 years, in the classroom, so the theoretical, the practical, we had a 15-hour lab per week and on and on. So many people I trained for 2 years, and they would go somewhere else. A good example would be the overhead. You're going to scratch your back, you're going to point, you're going to take these shuffle steps backwards. That still exists today. I mean, that was the industry norm. They'd say, no, you're going to go back. Someone with yourself has a football background, you're going to go back like a quarterback takes the crossover steps, and the left hand is on the throw to the racket, like the left hand's on the football, and they're going to turn their upper body, they're going to coil. But many of the people I trained, they went someplace and they said, no, that's not how we do it. We do it this way. And they let go of their education. But Gary, I mean, you communicated with him all those years he was in Colorado. I think it's great that, now with you, he's in a leadership position. Many of our students, it's like they're on an island. And I've always said that it's only going to work if the person in charge will let it work. And so for yourself and your brother as club owners, I actually think that, the owners really need to understand product knowledge. They run core information. And I know one of our listeners, I told him I was going to talk to you, and he had a question. I said, well, I'll bring it up on the podcast, is to go in and change a program at a tennis club. And one thing with your tennis club, I did some work for Tennis Corporation of America, and they had at that time, I guess now all their clubs are called Midtown, but one time it was just Midtown Chicago, which that was their largest club, and there's Midtown Rochester, New York. And I went in with the idea that, okay, I would like to be able to impact. They had 55 clubs when I went to work for them. So in Rochester, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, Midtown Rochester controlled all these small country club programs, tennis and swim programs. So I had a staff, 20, 25 coaches, and some of them would work outside of the club. Now, Midtown Chicago, their pros, most of them would leave the indoor center, and then they would just do their own show. And of course, the club owners, they certainly welcomed all their staff back for the indoor season, and they would bring their own clientele.
Yep.
So I think it was much easier to say, okay, we can make a program happen with the summer scenario in Rochester versus the summer scenario in Chicago. Could you touch upon that, how that works in indoor clubs?
Well, yeah, I mean, for us, my dad was going back to how it was structured, my dad was the silent partner. So it was the Osterfeld family, George and Carol Osterfeld. That was the builder. That was my dad's partner, and they had the controlling interest in the club for most of the time. And that was George's theory, is he would close the club in August to clean, repair, and work on the club. So in the summer months, he would all the staff would basically it'd be a skeleton crew. They would all these coaches would go to their outside swim clubs, country clubs, outdoor. We have several outdoor tennis only clubs, things like that. And they would go and work there. And his belief was exactly what you're saying. They would then recruit new members and bring them back, because people would tend to follow their coach and bring them back to the club. And it did. It worked. And really to this day, because we don't have the outdoor courts, and people in Cincinnati, after a long winter, gray winter, here, they want to get outside, and there's a lot of really nice outdoor country clubs, outdoor tennis clubs, And folks want to get outside and they want to play, and they're members of those clubs. So we allow our coaches to do that, and we have found that they do end up bringing back. They introduce Eastern Hills to new people, and they do come back and follow them. So,
they have,
does that answer your question?
So it's like you have programs within programs. It's very difficult to get all the coaches on the same page.
Yeah. When and I tell you, when you first came, when we introduced the GreatBase, and we were going to go in that direction to just our junior program, we weren't going to force. When we had a full staff and a staff we liked, and a lot of we have a huge adult program, and our adults like our coaches, and you're not going to just say, hey, take it or leave it. If you don't like the system, you're gone. We couldn't do that. And we had a nice staff. We had a good staff. And so, we tried to say, hey, we are going to hold the line on our junior program. And I remember you had said, hey, if they're a good policy is at least for the juniors, if they're not all in, they're out. And so I've kept that, and really it's been hard trying to get coaches who either are willing to get retrained, are humble enough to accept new information, and that might even be contrary to what they've been teaching for a number of years. And when we first changed over to this system, we had several pros who were just adamantly against it, and they just and we're like, okay, we respect your opinion. However, you're not in our program. You're not going to be teaching juniors, and slowly, some of those you come across, you hear stories of some of those coaches behind their backs telling people don't come to our club's junior program because this and this, and because they're used to the same games-based approach and fun, and so over time we've those pros have moved on, and we've kind of rebuilt our staff. And each time I interview a new coach, I absolutely go over the system, and I ask them to go and look at the website and start doing some homework and all of that. And I've been very pleased that we've had coaches who have come here that have been humble enough to look into it and do some homework, some of which may not agree 100% with what they might have a few things that they don't agree. But now we have a staff that I think they understand the value in it. And the other thing is the people that have stuck around have seen some of the results that we've gotten. They can tell some of the kids that we started with, and see how we get the results. So, as you had said, I remember you had said, hey, you're not going to sell your junior program, your kids will. It's how your kids hit the ball. That's what will really sell the program. And I agree with that. It's really going to be those results. And I think the coaches see it. So
with the bottom line, yourself as an owner, I know I've traveled as a consultant, and you go in, and what I've done many, many times is I just go the first day, just observe the program.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've done it sometimes. Maybe it's not as easy to do now with having a little bit of a profile on the internet. So you go in and you're incognito, and people don't even know who you are, and you're just observing the program. But, then there's just so many complexities. Everyone's an individual. Everyone has their own story in tennis. Everyone has their own entry point. Where are they currently? Where do they want to go? Just say, for example, a 15-year-old kid, he's been at the club for 5 years, and, you go in and go, well, fill out this goal sheet, and they write down they want to play college tennis. And then you say, well, okay, we're going to film, we're going to do skill testing, we're going to film match play, we're going to chart. And so you make a study of a young person's game, and then just say, well, you have to take steps backwards. A lot of people, obviously, they don't want to do that.
Right.
And, then with the club.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
Then if you're the owner, then, so say, new sheriff in town, someone comes in and goes, hey, this is how we want to do things. That's why in pro sports, generally if the general manager goes, everybody goes, the head coach,
Right,
the assistant coaches, and you just start anew.
Right.
That's not done in the tennis industry. But I
No, it's hard. It's hard to do.
The owners certainly have a fear if you're running a service-based program. That's basically the action method is go, go, go. And you want to come in, you want to slow people down. It's very difficult to do. And we've shared this many times. Dennis Vandermeer, he would have match play and simulated drills with, I remember it was a very short stint where Matt Clore was out of college tennis. And for 1 year, beautiful place in North Carolina, Cary Park. He was in charge of, he's in charge of the pros. He was in charge of instruction. And, then you think you get into the compensation packages, how the pros are paid. I mean, there's just, talk about layers of an onion. It just goes on and on. And, I remember advising Matt, said, no, what you need to do is have two programs. This is match play and simulated drills. And this is, fact-based instruction for long-term development. And, people are going to sign up for the fun drills. That's what they're going to do.
Right.
But that's where, kids regulate kids. So, looking back, say, well, you're either all in or you're all out. That's where a program needs to be in the end. If it is a program, we always say that, unfortunately, the individual becomes bigger than the program. Here in the U.S., it's very difficult to have a junior tennis program.
Yeah, and we're trying to kind of also follow your advice on. I've gone back. I was helping Gary with the GreatBase program, which is ages 10 and up, and now we've got another assistant kind of that's gone through a little bit of training who's helping, and Gary's leading that. And I've gone and taken over a younger kids class. So I'll do the early childhood development, and I'll do what we call the intro to GreatBase, which is ages 7 to 9. So I really enjoyed going back and working with those younger kids. I think that it's going to mean a whole lot, and we're going to see the fruit of our labor now that we're transitioning to taking someone who's a little bit more experienced in the system to work with the younger kids. So we're trying. Like I said, we're in transition. We're trying to. We're under construction. So
with the younger players, our last podcast, Richard Hernandez, who we've talked to before, we just talked about group dynamics, and at an indoor tennis club, it'd be ideal, like most of the day, if just one court was set up for people to improve their ball striking skills.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could have up, and I've talked about that. You have the portable backboards.
Technical court.
Just have a technical court. But he was just talking about, number one is it's so expensive. So someone at your place, they have to obviously pay for the court in the wintertime. I mean, you have to be able to pay your bills. So it's the
right.
How do you program that? Is it the cost of the court plus a lesson, or is it all written in as one?
Yeah, in the fall, well, because of our membership and how busy we are, we have we only allow members of the club to take private lessons. So, but that private lesson fee, is all included with the court fee, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
But as far as leaving the court, we've talked about, gosh, if our league play ends up going to where it's all three courts, during the week and all of that, would we ever, because our ball machine has become real popular, and it's like, well, I look at those lanes that Vic had, and it's like, gosh, and I've seen some other clubs as I travel with Sarah to outlying clubs for tournaments and stuff. You see different clubs who've turned a court into two ball machine lanes, and two and they've split a court up, and it's like, gosh, that would be great. But right now, where we are and all the things that we've got cooking and the size of our adult leagues and whatnot, it just really doesn't make sense to, as much as I would love to do it, because it would, I have that desire for that technique to be taught and to utilize technology and, video and ball machines to get as many reps as you can and all that stuff. It just, for us and what we've got going, it just doesn't make sense to take an entire court and do something like that on a permanent basis. But boy, it would be fun.
An experience I had with Midtown TCA, Tennis Corporation of America, is I was allowed to design a tennis court's 120 by 60. So they took 40 by 60 and had a cardio room, and it was $80,000. So 80 by 60. I designed 3 lanes. We had a plaque on the wall. The Vic Braid in the 19.1 degrees, and they weren't quite, the simulated design that Vic had wasn't as sophisticated, but.
Right.
And what you have with the mesh around indoor courts on both sides, at the end we had 3 different places where people could teach, and it was like a small classroom at the end of it, each lane, and it was surrounded by mesh, and it was a monitor and a camera, so there would be 3 pros teaching at one time, and then you could push all the mesh away, and then you just had this open area to do fitness. Now, what happened is it seemed like just a year went by, wasn't a very long period of time, and then they took away the entire court. So what they built with those 3 lanes, and there was a classroom. We even had a loft, a second level above the classroom, and that's where we stored all the video. At that time, our video was in Rochester, New York, where headquarters for Kodak. Kodak sponsored. Every person at the club had 2 videos, a technical and a tactical. But with that, have you and your brother, have you had those serious discussions about going from 8 courts to 7 and having 1 court just be fitness?
Right now, we haven't. I think we're fortunate to have as many teams as we have, and right now and all the other programming. Right now, we need courts. In the fall, winter, and spring. So right now it's not in the cards.
And how's it work with your facility? You have the 10 and under lines and the pickleball lines on every court?
No, because we got away. We went away. We just weren't using the 10 and under lines. Now I was using it to teach, but as far as actually doing 10 and under events or 10 and using, we just didn't. And then the last time we redid our courts, we're like, well, we're really not using this 10 and under lines other than our teaching pros, using them for drills and things like that. But so we end up doing away. We just have the clean courts, and we thought it was for our, we host, 9 or more Xavier matches a season, which is in our fall, winter, and spring. It's pretty significant. And so we thought it was a better look for them, to have clean courts. And I think our members, like having the clean courts. We do with pickleball. We've kind of marked off, where the corners are, and we just use tape, painter's tape, and we have the nets and things. So we haven't painted on any permanent lines other than it's just clean tennis. You'd love it because it's just tennis.
Right. I do. The 10 and under lines, though, that sideline is like the percentage line that we use with one of the 7 concepts, and that.
Yeah, it is.
The baseline it's great for teaching depth. We call it tiebreaker test 2, where you have to hit the groundies. Even initially when we used the tiebreaker test, Andy Fitzell added that, which I thought was fantastic. Is we're teaching people close in and volley cross court, but actually to teach better technique is in the tiebreaker test to have players hit the volleys down the line.
Yeah, as a coach, I do miss I miss those lines for some of those reasons. But so other than that, we just weren't using. We didn't have any 10 and under rule, events where we use the lines where they were playing. So,
do you have any of the adults train with the juniors?
We tried. We always will invite an adult to come down and be on court, and even if they wanted to participate, we just haven't gotten anyone to really take us up on it. Now we've done some. We definitely are, working with doing some more video with adults and showing them the content and driving them to the website. And some of that to complement what we do and things like that. So we are implementing it more with adults in our program and such. But as far as that, no, that's about it.
Gary Alpert, he's a big fan of brain typing.
Yes.
I know he just loves it. Certainly recommend people reading John Nienagel's book. There's so much written on the Myers-Briggs, so much to read. And we certainly dedicated a podcast to brain typing. What comes to your mind?
I'm an ENTJ.
That means you should be president of the United States. It's interesting. It's amazing how many quarterbacks are in the NFL are ESTPs, but many presidents have been ENTJs.
It's funny because Gary's an ISFP. So he and I always joke with him, like, Gary, you know why we like each other so much? I say, because we're direct opposites. Opposites attract, Gary. Anyway,
Myers-Briggs was used for marriage counseling, and it's true, opposites attract. That's where kids become master manipulators. They realize that the parents are wired differently, and they look left and look right. That's what I'm always telling parents. Rule number one is that you can disagree with each other, but don't disagree in front of your kid.
Right.
Major problem.
Right.
Problem. For every tennis player I've worked with, fortunately, you're meeting almost two parents. So, met lots of parents over the time. But ISFP.
Coach, you're an ENFJ, is that right?
Actually, DUMB. I'm a dummy. But, ENFJ, empathetic educator. With ENTJ, the CEO cannot not lead. Billie Jean King, John Newcomb. There's lots of ENTJs. Do you find yourself that you want to be in a leadership role?
I like organization. I like structure. I definitely think long term. I think so I'm a planner. Even when I teach, I always carry a clipboard. I have a lesson plan. Whether I use it or not, I know I do a better job when I know I have it, when I know I've thought it out ahead of time, I always carry that around. Yes, I do. I think that there are times that like with our junior program, if Gary and I have an issue with, how can we educate the parents, or how can we, what can we do to, always look at how can we be better at what we do and all of that. I tend to be more big picture than him. And so, even though, I consider him my mentor, he's a huge influence on me. And I told him that you'd find this funny. I told him before he knew I was going to do this tonight. I said, "Hey, Gary, I just want to apologize for anything I'm going to say tonight. I just want to apologize." He looked at me cross-eyed, and, he didn't know if I was joking or what, but so I'm sure he's going to listen to this. So he's been great. And I find that I do want to lead. But I think that there's times where, like when we brought him along, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I realized I didn't know, and I wanted to know. I realized there was a lot I didn't know when he first, came to the club, and I felt good that I was looking more for the truth than I cared about what I had no problem changing what I was teaching because I wanted to do it well and I wanted to do it right. It wasn't an ego thing. I was looking for the truth, and I wanted to educate myself and all of that. And so yeah, I think I am big picture. I think I do like to lead when I can, when I feel confident in my skills to lead, I guess.
Yeah, with the word truth that came up many times in our last podcast with Richard Hernandez. Facts, don't tell me what you think, tell me what you know.
Yeah.
Can it be measured, and is there any physics involved? What makes the ball, the speed, spin, trajectory. I mean, it's not opinion. So many things.
Right.
With and now in hiring people, do you use you find yourself using the brain typing?
Well, I there was a time where after I got comfortable with people and all that, I'd say, hey, I would take Jonathan Niednagel's his test, and I'd make a bunch of copies, like just for fun. Let's just you feel like taking a fun personality test. It's kind of like a Myers-Briggs thing, and if they agreed to do it, they would do it. And and so, but no, I introvert, extrovert, that kind of thing. It's hard to get. It's hard. Number one, it's hard to find good people. And staffing is a challenge. I don't want to bring in anyone just to feed balls and keep score. I want people who are interested in learning, humble enough to look at the information that we have, and then that has a personality. Like I said, can you chat people up? Can you that kind of thing? And I know that our membership, they're tough. They're used to some really good pros. We've had some fantastic pros, and people that have been with us a long time. People that even if they've moved on, they're either involved in tennis or not, but they were just excellent, really, at organizing and executing quality lessons for people. So it's hard for me because the standard's pretty high, and our membership has come to demand a certain level of expertise. It's finding those people and or training, finding people willing to be trained. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I say, when I interview them, I find out they know very little, and I hit with them, and they're 4.0 plus and with holes in their games, but they seem willing to learn. And I sit them in my office. I said, well, you're going to have to not, you're going to have to take the role. I stole your line. You're going to have to be the starving artist here a little bit, and you're going to have to, I'm happy to provide you information, help train you, show you where you can get information, work on your craft, work on your feeding, work on, film you, work on your strokes. And if you really want this, you're going to have to work for it here. And then they go down the street and they get hired instantly because they can feed a ball and keep score, and then they're a pro and they're already making money. So it's harder for me because I guess I'm a little bit more stubborn on that front.
What you added at the end, I was just about to ask about with in-house training, but people will go right down the street and it's like, well, this is instant coffee. They're just going to hire me, and there's no orientation. They just roll out the ball basket and they're feeding balls, and there's no rhyme or reason. And that's, I hate to say it, but that's American tennis. It's just it's amazing. The programs don't have orientations. And we got to have
and you don't know if you don't know how much they're going to invest in their time, but this happened recently where a pro came into my office, had very little background, just started teaching in the summertime at a local outdoor club, and worked on being able to feed a ball, and like I said, they felt like they wanted to pursue this as an occupation. And as I interviewed them and you start finding out what they know very little. You get them on court, it's not good. Their feeding's not that great. And you're square one. And then they have an interview with another a club down the street or up the road, and they call and they say, "Hey, listen, I got a job. They already got hours for me," and I see the posting on their website and they introducing, "Hey, this pro is great," and all this stuff. I'm thinking, shaking my head, knowing what I just interviewed and knowing what I just saw, and thinking, "Oh my goodness, it's not good."
Hey, let's circle back. Pete Rose. I told the young listeners going to look up Charlie Hustle. Tell us about
Charlie Hustle.
Watching him play tennis when you were a kid at your dad's
Oh
camp.
yeah, it was great. I mean, Pete Rose is so much about Cincinnati, and so again, where the club was situated in Cincinnati, Pete Rose played at our club, and as a kid, my dad used to have these what they would call early birds. So he would open the club at like 6:30 in the morning. We'd go, and if I was off school, he'd drag me out of bed. We'd go pick up donuts and make coffee for players, and sure enough, Pete would come down with his attorney, Reuben Katz, longtime attorney, and then a couple other guys, and they'd play doubles. So I grew up, and this would be a few times a year I would go down, and Pete would be down there. He was a regular when he was in town, and there was early birds. He was there. So I remember seeing Pete running balls down, and this guy he's a Major League Baseball player, and he's out there diving for balls, running into the curtain, full steam. I mean, the strokes weren't that great, but boy, that guy, he was Charlie Hustle. And I remember one morning my dad's like, "Hey Pete, you mind hitting some with my son?" So I got to hit some tennis balls with Pete Rose. That was quite a thing.
With Pete Rose, whether you call it the Prince Valiant haircut or the Bull haircut, Pete Rose and Jimmy Connors had the same hairstyle, and it wasn't Pete Rose copying Jimmy Connors. It was Jimmy Connors copying Pete Rose. Pete came before Jimmy was older. But it's amazing. When you watch Connors play tennis, you just think that this guy is copying Pete Rose. I mean, he was Charlie Hustle as well.
Charlie Hustle, yeah, right.
What about being from Ohio? What comes to your mind when you hear Ty Tucker and Ohio State tennis?
Oh well, I mean, we follow Ohio State quite a bit. I mean, as a school, I grew up with Woody Hayes, and watching and loving football. So I grew up loving the Buckeyes, and so UC back then didn't really have much of a team, and so I've since I was a kid, I've been a Buckeye fan, at least on the football side, and then with the tennis, we follow him, and that's what a program he's built. I mean, and I've seen some. I've never met Ty. And I actually have not been to a men's match. I've been to a ladies match. It was right before the pandemic hit, and I took Sarah up there, my daughter up there, to watch the ladies play Arizona State, I think it was, and JJ's sister at the time was playing for Ohio State, and JJ Wolf. So yeah, we went up there to watch her play, and but yeah, I've never seen. I've heard. I have some buddies who will go up and watch. They always really talk about the warm up, how crazy his warm ups are before the match, how intense he gets these guys going, and as my buddies would say, gosh, I think Ohio State wins the match in warm up, and the other team's watching these guys go through their warm up. It's pretty intense. I know, I mean, gosh, your son, Connor, I mean, you've got many more stories than I would.
Well, with Ty, we've got to get him on the podcast. I've talked to him here recently about it. You drive into Columbus and, there's a sign. It's, I believe, Jack Nicklaus Museum. Nicklaus, a great golfer, went to Ohio State. But Ty, I mean, could ask him, why is there a building that says Ty Tucker Center or Ty Tucker Tennis Center? I think the answer is winning. They have just won and won and won.
Yeah.
With
Culture.
My son played there, and when he was there, there was a player on the team, Devin McCarthy. You must know that name from Cincinnati.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I believe he has two other brothers, and they not for the same team. I think they all play for a different Big Ten team. And he was just a great competitor. With Andy Fitzell, he was with me when we first went to Cincinnati, went to your club, and I know there's quite a bit of I don't know how our listeners actually would look at that, but there's a lot of film where he comes from great genes, great athletic family, but you can see it with his ball striking that Andy really helped him refine his skills.
I remember seeing that video of where he was had that regress palm up serve, and then he turned it around.
No, he actually I think he did a great job. He came to visit when we were running one of those immersion camps at your club.
Yeah, that's right.
JJ came. I think he's top 60 in the world right now. For our listeners, the immersion club is one of the best ways to run a tennis program in the summer. Is you go out and you buy an air mattress for every kid, that's $10. You buy a sleeping bag, that's $10. And the girls go to the right and they have their own locker room. The boys go to the left. They sleep on the tennis court.
Mm-hmm.
That's very common in Europe. You can do it at a beautiful place like yours because in the summertime in the U.S., you have to have air-conditioned courts to do that. It's pretty tough in certain parts of the country to actually sleep outside.
Yeah, that was when you came up. I think it was 2 summers, right? And it was back to back. That was a heck of a neat experience, and it kind of goes back to you can see that championship culture that you have, and it kind of develops. You can really see, and I know that you have kids that are coming and going, and it's not like you have a team. But boy, how you coach these kids up, the character side. I remember when I came to NC State with Gary and Brandon to meet you and kind of see the program up front in person. And boy, we walk out on the court, and I think you stopped practice, or there was a break, and each kid, I've never seen anything like it, really. These kids, all ages, came up, shook my hand, firm handshake, eye contact, introduced themselves, leaned in. You just don't see that, and you can tell that's part of a championship culture being built, and so yeah, that's and then when you see it every day, all day in immersion camp, like you guys put on, and you got kids coming from all over the country, some internationally, and they get a heavy dose of character, is refreshing because it kind of goes back to my football days. I mean, there was so much character being taught in football that you see that. You don't see it as in tennis. I haven't, and that was really neat to see.
Well, one connection of many that you and I have is when you say film work. I played little Pop Warner football. I was a runt. By the time I was in high school, my older brother said, "You need to run cross country." But with film work, I became a big fan of a gentleman by the name of Sam Volo. And when you were in the 7th grade, if you had a high enough GPA, grade point average, you could sign out of study hall. So then you had study hall, you had lunch period, and you had your PE class. And what he would do, he was the athletic director and a physical educator. He is an old sequence analyzer. He would show the game from Saturday 3 times. He was looking at every period, but I could go three periods. And that had such an impact on me. It was, then Jerry Kramer came along, who played for Vince Lombardi, and he wrote the book Instant Replay. And, it was just around that time where people were really using film. And then high school, I love to tell people that high school football, it's a law in America that your high school, the high school you play for, you have to get your game film. You play on a Friday or Saturday, you've got to get your game film by Monday morning. It's got to be on the high school campus of the team you're playing next, and then vice versa.
That's right.
Vice versa.
That's right.
Another thing,
Yeah.
I'm always talking about two-a-days. I know you survived those. My father used to always say, because my older brothers, two out of the three, one played. They didn't play. They weren't with competitive football very long, and they played golf. Two of them, and, pretty high level golf. And my father used to say, you boys should go up there and watch Sam Volo's two-a-days. Just go watch what those guys are doing. Because everywhere in the United States, even where you live
Right.
up in Ohio, by the time August comes around, it's hot in Ohio.
Oh, it's brutal.
With Katie McNally, she's from Cincinnati. Tell us a little about her
Yes.
story.
Yeah. I mean, she's the daughter of Lynn Neighbors McNally and John McNally, and Lynn is she played. I think she played Big Ten
Northwestern,
college tennis. Yeah, Northwest. There you go. So, and I think she played even a little bit of pro tennis. But she coaches here locally, and then and then Katie's brother John played at Ohio State.
Yeah, he's still trying. He's still out there.
Right, he's trying to crack the
climb the ladder. I know my son.
Right.
I think when John was a recruit, throw a dog a bone when he was a young guy. My son was older, and maybe I don't know, play a challenger doubles with him or something. But yeah, amazing tennis family. What about the dad? He's a former athlete, right?
Yeah, I don't know as much. I don't know as much about John, the dad. I know he's a recreational tennis player. I think he had some athletic background. I don't know as much about. I know more about Lynn because she's in the industry. She's a grinder. I'm friends with Steve Contardi and working. Their club is in our league, and Harper's Point is where they're out of, and Lynn works there as a coach, and you just hear about the work ethic. Lynn's work ethic. She just grinds out the hours, and so she's a worker bee, and I think I've not met him, but I went to a coaches conference, and they had Lynn was talking. This is out at Harper's, and Kevin O'Neill is Katie McNally's coach, I believe. I don't know much about him. I think he played some pretty big college tennis, but so that's her coach. I love the fact that she's one of those, you see the full court tennis players on the women's side. You'll see her serving volley. You'll see her have more of a full court game. I love it, and then being from Cincinnati, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd have to do a little more research, but I certainly heard that about the mother. I remember a number of times years gone by listening to Steve Contardi at whether it was a USPTA, some conference. I used to go to all those things, but with Katie McNally, her tennis game makes me think of a story. A couple of weeks back, we had Mike Carter on. He was with me for 5 years, and I went to a wedding. One of my brothers was being married or getting married, and so I couldn't be at the orientation. We really didn't need an orientation because we had 9 months to train the summer staff. But we would, have a couple of days before. It's okay. But, 9 months is a long time to train someone to be part of a summer camp because we had the entire school year. But the athletic director allowed a girl from New Zealand who was a very good player. She was number one on the tennis team because she's so far away from home. He said, yeah, he made the exception because you had to go through the training to be part of the summer camp at this college. So the athletic director made this one exception. So I wasn't there for the couple of days before the camp started. And she came in and she was the best player. And, she just said, no, that's wrong. And this is how you hit an overhead. And, she's maybe 19 years old. And so this had nothing to do with Katie McNally, except for the way Katie McNally hits the ball. This girl from New Zealand hit the ball really well. Of course, I'm on campus and I'm watching her play. And Mike Carter's going, I tried to run orientation, but it didn't go well. And he told me why. He said that she was just very disruptive and everything that we do is wrong. And, the racket face is open and you chip down on the backhand, all the typical stuff.
Right.
And I said, oh, no problem. So the very first thing in camp, what we did is I said, what we're going to do is a little bit different. and not to share her name, but I said, we're going to film our Kiwi. We're going to film our player from the other side of the world, and we're going to teach strokes basically the way she hits the ball.
I love it.
And that's the Braden thing, is that, you know, she had these short compact swings, it loops, she had really good grips, and, you know, she had a palm down overhead. She was a solid player, and she just was like, uh-oh. I mean, that's where you really have to film it. But I think with Katie McNally, she hits the ball so well, and I really haven't made an up close study of her game, but that's what needs to happen. Is okay, she's really good. And then say, okay, let's look at how she hits the ball, and but you have to slow it down. Yeah, even if you were to have a sequence of, you know, 6 frames on her forehand, 6 frames on her backhand, and you know, that's what needs to happen. And you know, it sounds like it's great in Cincinnati to get everybody on the right page with the same page, which is right, you know, for league tennis. But I know Dave Fish was a guest on our podcast, and for years he's saying, what we really have to organize is competition and instruction. And, you know, then he's turned to me and he goes, it's going to be a lot easier to try to organize competition than it is to organize instruction.
You know, it was really fast. What was fascinating? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
What was really fascinating for me when I taught snowboarding, and I was a intermediate snowboarder, but with my tennis teaching background, they hired me. I was good enough to teach beginners and all of that. But what I found was, as I got into that teaching a different sport, how organized snowboarding and alpine skiing were as far as what was being taught. They had booklets. They would hand you a booklet, and if you wanted to become certified, everyone got the same booklet, and you taught, you know, the falling leaf and the garland turned, and everything was taught the same way. It was, and everyone had the same book, and everyone, you know, so it was very structured. But tennis is nothing like that.
Well, you know,
it was interesting.
Actually, for our listeners, Brian has listened to 114 podcasts. Is that right? Now this is
114. I'm behind. I need a couple more road trips. Sarah and I are going to get in the car and go to a doubles tournament. I love it because it's going to be doubles. But this weekend, so I'm going to get to listen to 115.
With Gail Godwin, she worked for Vic. She was a coach at UCLA, and then she ran his ski school. And if people want to dig deep on YouTube, there's a very nice tribute. Just plug in Vic Braden Memorial, and she talks about how Vic really impacted the ski industry, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, okay. I bet. And I bet he was pretty well received. It's from at least my limited experience with that industry and that in coaching that I was impressed how organized they were, and they all, like I said, it's like they weren't arguing over forehands. They were arguing over, you know, how to you know, do a hockey stop or whatever. You know, I mean.
No, so. Vic Braden, had been many places with Vic college campuses, and it's like, okay, you know, there's a psychology department, there's physics. I mean, there's just like, he could teach here, he could teach there. But even when we had to check on some AV equipment, he was very humble and said, you know, I think I can fix that. But yeah, he was a mastermind. Here's a few things on Bill Talbert. He 5 majors in doubles, 4 majors in mixed. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer. He wrote a book on singles and doubles. The doubles, they're both, they're I would say must reads for people that are really layers of an onion, people that are deep students of the game. The Game of Doubles, published in 1977, written by Bruce Old, OLD. Tony Trabert, 5 majors in singles, 5 in doubles, won Davis Cup in '54, coached Davis Cup '78 to '80. This is interesting. For 33 years, Tony Trabert worked for CBS. and he worked for All Sports, but he was the voice of the U.S. Open with Pat Summerall, the place kicker from football. And I did mention that he played both tennis and basketball at Cincinnati. But yeah, number one in the world for the longest time. It was like, who's going to be the next American to do well at the French? I think it was 55 where Tony won the French, but it was Michael Chang in '89. So a long time went between when one won the French and one won, Travert's win and Chang's. But here's a great personality. Barry McKay was number one in the world, number one in America, number 4 in the world. Between singles and doubles, he's a Cincinnati boy. He won 40 titles. He's knocking on the door to win a major. He's in the semis of Wimbledon, Australia, quarterfinals of French and the U.S. Open. And at one time, he was, like the most popular broadcaster for televised matches. With
wow.
Let's go with some quotes. We got to wrap this thing up here. I mean, it's great to have you online here. Any quotes?
I love. I love that the young gentleman you had who was shadowing you guys had some quotes at the end. He said he wanted to up his quote game. So I thought, you know what, I got to get a couple of my own. So I did some digging, and of course I got the Lou Holtz tradition is always under construction. But I got another good one from Lou Holtz. No one ever drowned in sweat. How about that? That's a good one.
Yeah, that's great.
That sounds like Lou Holtz, doesn't it? Gil Rays. This is Andre Agassi's trainer. Gil. Weak legs command, strong legs obey.
That's good.
I like that one.
Yeah.
They got a Bobby Knight one. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I got
excited about it.
Yeah, that's Bobby Knight. And I got one. This is Dan Gable, who is Iowa's wrestling coach. If you know anything about wrestling, Iowa's the school to go to. This guy coached 45 national champions and 12 Olympians. And he said, gold medals aren't really made of gold. They're made of sweat, determination, and a hard-to-find alloy called guts.
That's fantastic, yeah. Yeah, I'd like to call those mind vitamins. You got to hear them all the time. And then if then I tell people, if you keep repeating it, pretty soon you own it. That's a great thing for people to do on a road trip. You get a group of tennis players and say, okay, let's go around and how many mind vitamins can we rattle off?
Yeah.
If I had to ask you to read one more, let's go with Dan Gable's. Read that one more time and we'll call it a night.
Yeah, the Dan Gable. Okay, gold medals aren't really made of gold. They're made of sweat, determination, and a hard-to-find alloy called guts.
No guts, no glory. The wrestlers, one of my sisters part-time, or for just a few years, she taught high school math, and she just could not believe what wrestlers would do to cut weight.
Oh.
They're wearing a rubber suit in her class, and they haven't eaten in 3 days, and you see those wrestlers go up and down ropes. It's just so sad what's happened. Title IX's not perfect. It was for the longest time. It just wasn't fair for women, but wrestling, men's tennis too, but wrestling's really taken hit because of that.
I mean, you look at all the sports with the workers, the heart, and you'd have to put wrestling right on up there, in my opinion.
Well, I think your background with football. I mean, I think that's one of the last standing cultures to teach character. I mean, we're so far away from teaching character in tennis, in my opinion, in this country.
Yeah.
That's where in some ways.
Yeah. Who's on my court? Yeah. Who's on my court?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I'm a dinosaur, and maybe I should just just be totally into tennis education. But. Yeah, we can't keep up the good fight. We have to try to keep making our sport better. Anything you want to end up with? I mean, maybe we didn't spend enough time on forehands and backhands, but it's been great. Oh
no, it's good. I tell you, it's a privilege. I mean, after listening to 114 of these and all the the people you've interviewed and all that. I'm pretty humbled with being now being included. So
No, you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that.
We need to, and certainly you know this, is that there's strength in numbers, and we have more and more people. We've been a snowflake, and I think now we're a snowball. I don't think we'll ever be an avalanche. Tennis needs an avalanche as far as, we need information. We need to carry the torch of the tennis teachers in the past. But I'd say we're becoming a snowman. But with our alumni, our associates, I hope now that we're a nonprofit here.
Congratulations on that. That's great.
Thanks. I mean, we just aspire to giving out free content, and we'll be looking for some people to try to help us with that. And we want to give out more content. Basically, I think what we need to do is keep doing what we're doing, but doing better. I mean, Cole Reeves, who was up at your place, he came and was a contributing coach a couple of those times we had a camp at your place, and I think he says it quite well. As the tennis intelligence applied, we just need to have a 2.0.
Yeah.
The brevity, the clarity, and there's things that we certainly can improve upon. But anyway, it's been great. Great to talk to you. And like I said, that at the onset, there's always golden nuggets. I think that people have to hang in there, and I think what you're saying is, car ride, 10 minutes.
Yep, we're always under construction.
Yeah, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. We are looking at having a new format where maybe we get several speakers on at one time, and we just have one topic, and we go 1 hour. But the nice thing about the podcast, and I do have got this feedback, is people need to go back and listen to the return to serve. You say, for example, go back and the underspin backhand, and we dedicated maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, just those nuts and bolts of there's the X's and O's, but there's the nuts and bolts. There's how do you build? How do you build an all-court game?
Yeah, tennis math. How many times I've listened to that one? Tennis math.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that.
Yeah, with remember Patrick Moneygoulou. I was over there, and he said, "You're all about math. Tennis is art," and it is an art. I mean, it's an art and a science. But at the end, I don't think people can say, "Well, this is your style." And it's just amazing that it's like, why is tennis the way it is? Is that it's all one-on-one, man-on-man, where who wins, and it's just not like football when you're talking about, what did you call it? What type of steps that they used to count?
False steps.
False steps.
False steps. Don't take any false steps.
Yeah, I mean, here's one thing. We roll some film, and they come to see us, and they have a total palm up serve. Their toss is high. By the time they're at the impact point, I mean, their chest is rubbing the cement. And you say, well, what are you working on? And they'll say, the pinpoint stance. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. That's like buying the furniture for a house before you've even finished the foundation. There's no there's no walls, there's no roof, and you're out buying furniture.
Right.
But Brian, thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah.
A pleasure.
Yeah. All the best. You and your family.
Okay.
Your staff.
Okay.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. 120 in the books. Thanks for listening. I hope our listeners, I know I did, a great guy, doing great service to the game with his family, with the indoor facility they have in Cincinnati. But thank you, Brian Clark. Thank you, listeners. Adios, amigos.